Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the panel chat hosted by the University of West Los Angeles, specifically by our wonderful president, President Robert W. Brown. For those of you who know me, I think I could say that I'm one of the biggest fans of the University of West Los Angeles. However, I officially became the greatest fan when the university decided to give immediate attention to our brothers and sisters in Artsakh. I would like to first start off by thanking the University of West Los Angeles for their immediate attention and willingness to help out our brothers and sisters currently fighting on the front lines. Without UWLA, this panel chat would not happen. I would like to also thank our viewers for allocating their Friday night to spend with us and our wonderful panel members on educating themselves on what is currently taking place in Armenia and Artsakh. Many soldiers are losing their lives on the front lines. Schools are being destroyed. Homes are being burned. Churches are being destroyed. This is our attempt to educate the public and make everyone aware as to what is taking place in Artsakh. I would like to direct everyone's attention to a brief video to explain live front hand from a family member of a student at UWLA.
Hello, I'm Zvart. I live in Armenia. My friend Hakimian, who is a student at the University of West Los Angeles, asked me to prepare this video to tell you about the current situation in Armenia and Nagorno Karabakh. On September 27th, we woke up to war. Azerbaijan, backed by the Turkish military officers who are guiding all the operations, using Turkish military equipment, including artillery, unmanned aircraft vehicles, airplanes, and other equipment, also using a big number of Islamist terrorists who were recruited by Turkey from Syria and Libya and brought to Azerbaijan to fight against Armenians, started a wild-scale attack all over the line of contact between Nagorno Karabakh Republic and Azerbaijan. Since then, we've had tens of thousands of civilians displaced, officially declared 500 dead, probably more. A lot of people living in shelters, a lot of misfortunes and sad stories. One of my coworkers died a few days ago. One of my friends had her father, brother, and boyfriend killed within just one day. People in Nagorno Karabakh live in shelters, every day being under constant threat of death. Azerbaijan is targeting not just military objects, not just combatants, but also civilians, using cluster munitions, which is prohibited by international humanitarian law. In order for you to imagine how tough the situation is, I'll give you some numbers. The population of Armenia is about 3 million. The population of Azerbaijan is nearly 10 million, and the population of Turkey is more than 80 million. Plus, we're fighting Islamist mercenaries, jihadist radicals, recruited by Turkey from Syria, Libya, and also from Afghanistan. As a nation who survived 9/11, the American people has to understand our pain. What can you do about this situation? Two main things. We need help in form of donations. We need resources to be able to resist this enormous power. The brave Armenian people are facing an enormous enemy which wants to destroy cultures, civilizations, religions, and people. Secondly, you can ask your government to recognize the independence of Nagorno Karabakh Republic, which will be the only security guarantee for the people to protect their right to live peacefully in their own historical land, where they've been living for thousands of years. Your voice matters. Thank you.
Just hearing that message shows how much our brothers and sisters need our help. The Armenia Fund was kind enough to set a special page for the donations collected through the University of West Los Angeles. To date, we have collected $2,250 to donate to the Armenia Fund. However, we had set a goal of donating $25,000 to the Armenia Fund, and we continue to hope that we are going to meet our goal and we are going to be able to help out our brothers and sisters. As was clear by that brief video we just saw, our brothers and sisters are in dire help. It is not too late to make a donation. Should you wish to make one, please see the link in the chat box. Momentarily, you will see a link that will direct you to a page set up directly through the Armenia Fund, and it is not too late to help out. I would like to introduce the president of the University of West Los Angeles, President Robert W. Brown, and he would like to give a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Suzy. And thanks to all of you, our panelists, those out there watching this program. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and to hopefully have your consciousness raised about this very serious situation, this very serious conflict. Our brothers and sisters in Armenia need our help. And anyone who is part of the UWLA family is deserving of our support and our assistance, and we are here to provide that. I want to first of all thank and express my gratitude to our students, staff, professors who put this program together in such a short period of time. Thanks to all of you. Dean Jay Frickberg, Associate Dean Eric Zagara, Vice President Troy Brown, and of course, Professor SUZY MARJANIAN, and all of our panelists and professors who contributed to developing this program. Thanks very much. I want to share with you how this program came about and why we are doing it. I received an email from one of our second-year students. Her name is Kayla Amroyan. I'd like to read a few excerpts from her email, and I think that all of us will feel and empathize with the plea that she set forth and why this is something that we just can't ignore. Kayla wrote, "My name is Kayla Amroyan, and I'm a second-year law student at your fine institution. Today, I am desperately and wholeheartedly asking for your support regarding the ongoing crisis occurring in the Republic of Artsakh and the Republic of Armenian. I'm writing to you today to please stand with me and your fellow Armenian students of UWLA in supporting our movement to urge President Trump and his administration to condemn Azerbaijan's military operation in Nagorno Karabakh and denounce Turkish interference in this conflict. Mr. Brown, I beg you to please use your platform and powerful voice and words to influence law students, not just from UWLA, but all around the country, to stop the aggression against the innocent people of Artsakh and Armenia. The Armenians are outnumbered, and we desperately need the help of influential figures like yourself to spread awareness and to stop the aggression. One statement, one newsletter, or even one message from a figure like yourself will send a great message to the people of the state and country and to all other law schools." She concluded after a few more paragraphs and saying, "Mr. Brown, we need you. Your students need you. Please, Mr. Brown, please, anything you can do will be extremely appreciated." Who can ignore those heartfelt words? But I must admit to you and confess to you that my initial reaction was the one that we all have, right? What can I do? Who am I? I'm no one. I don't even know much about the conflict. What's my convenient way of ignoring those pleas? I've got so much else to do. I was ashamed of that reaction. I was ashamed of it. And I was so happy that after a few more moments of reflection, I said, I have, this now is the most important thing that I can do. Because inhumanity, injustice, violence to anyone is a violence to everyone. And we must all stop immediately and make every effort to address it. So we put this panel presentation together with objectives. Number one objective was raise people's consciousness, enlighten, inform people about the conflict. Number two, to see if we could use our small platform and our network to raise funds and resources and assets for the people who are being besieged by this conflict. And number three, we want to take this to another level, ultimately, and put together a really scholarly piece of work describing from a legal standpoint of view what this injustice means and how we all can address it. I want to thank again all of you for participating this evening. Thank you for taking your very valuable time. And I hope that you will join me in making certain that we never turn our backs on anyone in need, especially in such a pivotal and critical time as this. Thank you, Suzy, and thanks again to everyone.
Thank you, President Brown. And I once again would like to thank you in front of all of our viewers that if it were not for you and your willingness to put this panel chat together, this would not have happened. So I'd like to sincerely thank you in front of all our viewers.
It is my deep honor, and I so respect our Armenian community. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I'd like to move forward with the introduction of our panel members. As you all can see, we have some wonderful panel members selected. I have my professor from when I attended the University of West Los Angeles, Professor Sam EKIZIAN. We have Father VAZKEN MOVSEIAN. We have Karni Kirkonian. We have Reverend DJAMBAZIAN, who was the pastor of the church my grandmother used to attend for many, many years. And last but not least, we have the attorney whom I looked up to from the minute I wanted to become a lawyer, and that is Attorney Mark Garagos. And to sit here on a panel chat with you, Mark, is just the greatest blessing I can ask for. So I'd like to thank all of our panel members. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to each one of them so that you all can get a feel for who's going to present to you today. And I'm going to go in the order of all of the panel members. First, we have Reverend BERDJ DJAMBAZIAN. Reverend BERDJ DJAMBAZIAN currently serves as minister to the Union of the Armenian Evangelical Union of North America. He was born to survivors of the Armenian genocide. He pastored 2 Armenian churches. He served as an educator, a pastor, and a relief worker in Beirut. He established a medical clinic with 6 doctors, providing medical services during the civil war in Lebanon. He served as a senior pastor for the United Armenian Congregational Church in Los Angeles. He helped establish 3 other churches. He led more than 40 relief outreach teams to Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Sudan, Turkey, and Armenia. He's fluent in Armenian, German, French, Arabic, Turkish, and English. Reverend DJAMBAZIAN made several trips to Sudan, delivering relief to the Darfurian genocide survivors. And for more than 30 years, he has continued to tape and distribute his program, which is called Nor Huis, in English, meaning New Hope, reaching out to the Armenian community at large with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We will hear from Professor Sam EKIZIAN, who's also an attorney. Sam EKIZIAN is a partner in the law firm of Kreger and EKIZIAN with lengthy litigation experience in both plaintiff and defense cases. He specializes in personal injury as well as civil and probate litigation. He has significant experience in appellate matters. He has handled numerous cases in both state and federal courts, ranging from complex civil litigation matters to those involving significant constitutional issues. Mr. EKIZIAN received his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Laverne, where he graduated summa cum laude as valedictorian. He has been an adjunct professor of law for over 20 years, teaching legal writing and jurisprudence. In fact, he was the very first law school that I ever took when I started attending the University of West Los Angeles. He is active in the legal community, and he is admitted to practice law in various courts in the state of California, as well as the United States. We will hear from Father VAZKEN MOVSEIAN. He is the priest of the Armenian Apostolic Church. He has served in parishes beginning from San Jose to Pasadena to Glendale, and he currently heads the Department of Christian Outreach and Electronic Ministry for the Western Diocese of North America. He is the recipient of the YWCA's Purple Tie Award for his work in organizing and leading various marches and rallies to bring awareness to domestic violence within immigrant communities. Coupled with his personal experience, he actually traveled to Rwanda to work with those who were ravaged by genocide. In addition to dealing with a lot of genocide survivors, he founded the In His Shoes movement, which challenges victims of horrific tragedies to move forward by extending assistance to others, by, in essence, walking in their shoes. The movement has brought relief in the form of food and shelter to thousands of people throughout the world. His voice is heard on 5 continents by followers of his weekly podcast, The Next Step, which has consistently been on broadcast since 2008. We will also hear from Carney Kakorian live from Chicago. Carney holds an AB magna cum laude in government from Harvard University, as well as 2 law degrees, a JD from the University of Chicago, where he served as law review, as well as a postdoctoral diploma in international law from Cambridge University. Upon completing his studies, he joined Mayor Brown in Chicago, dealing with federal litigation and appeals. And then in 2003, he decided to open his own practice. He currently leads the international group known as Kirkonian Dejani LLC, focusing on international transactions, foreign sovereign immunity litigation, and commercial sanction regime matters. Interestingly enough, he currently serves on the board of governors to the Armenian Bar Association and its Armenian Genocide Reparations Committee, and is co-chair of its Armenian Watch Committee. Mr. Kakorian currently represents the Republic of Artsakh in an alien tort claims matter against drone parts manufacturer currently pending in the United States District Court. He also represents plaintiffs in matters involving Armenian cultural and religious rights against the Republic of Turkey currently pending in California. He also represented the National Museum of the Republic of Armenia in the Bejeweled Gun of Mahmud I matter, in which a Baltimore museum agreed to ascribe proper attribution to a 17th century artifact in its Armenian artisan. And last but not least, Mark Geragos. As the principal with the internationally known trial law firm of Geragos and Geragos, Mark Geragos cemented his national reputation as a trial lawyer 20 years ago with back-to-back state and federal jury trial acquittals for renowned Whitewater figure Susan McDougal, later securing a presidential pardon for Miss McDougal for a conviction sustained prior to his representation of her. During the last 2 decades, Mr. Geragos has won 2 consecutive dismissals of murder charges against clients by providing false and flawed witness identification and winning on those grounds. One of those clients later won a $1.7 million settlement when the Geragos firm sued the city of Glendale for their false arrest. Mr. Geragos was also one of the lead lawyers in a pair of groundbreaking federal class action lawsuits against a New York Life Insurance and the AXA Corporation for insurance policies that were issued in the early 20th century during the genocide of over 1.5 million Armenians by the Ottoman Turk regime, eventually settling those cases for more than $37.5 million. Mr. Giragos is the only lawyer besides Johnny Cochran ever named Lawyer of the Year in both civil and criminal arenas. Mark Giragos has also represented some of the most prominent individuals in the world. His client list included former Congressman Gary Condit, former First Brother Roger Clinton, former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, Academy Award nominated actress Winona Ryder, pop star Michael Jackson, Nicole Richie, singer Chris Brown, hip hop stars Nathaniel, as you all know, as Nate Dogg, and Sean Diddy Combs, as you all know, as Puff Daddy, international arms dealer Sarkis Sornalian, and Barry Bonds' personal trainer, Gary Anderson, in his matter relating to the federal investigation in the steroid use in professional sports. Giragos has regularly appeared both guest and legal commentator on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Dateline NBC, Larry King Live, 60 Minutes, and 48 Hours. Mr. Giragos attended Haverford College in Pennsylvania as an undergraduate and later earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Loyola Law School. Thank you all for listening to those biographies. I have a few ground rules for all my panel members. Each panel member will speak as to their own topic. We will take questions from the panel members, time permitting, and we will take questions from the audience, time permitting. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our first panel member, Reverend DJAMBAZIAN.
Thank you, Suzy, and thank you, Dr. Brown, for your compassionate heart, for your interest towards our people, especially in times like these. And Suzy, you are an amazing communicator. I really appreciate what you have done to make this program a reality. And I am so honored to be with distinguished panelists on this program. And my heart, my thoughts are at this time and for the last several weeks with Artsakh, with Karabakh. During the first war, I was a couple of days in the trenches with the fighters, with Barkev Sirpazan together, praying for our fighters and doing and fulfilling our job towards them. So sometimes I have like guilt feeling, what am I doing here? I should have been there. But I'm praying and I am supporting them through everything that I can. And this program is also part of that support granted to our faithful, courageous fighters right on the front. Just imagine for a moment that some of our fighters are on the top of the mountain, 3,300 meters high. I mean, right in the middle of the snow. And I studied in Switzerland in the Alps. I went up to, our seminary was in 2,200 meters, but this one is 3,300 meters high. So we need to pray and support them in every way we can. So I am delighted to bring my share, and I will be as short as I can so that others could also have enough time to participate. Let me just share with you that Armenia is one of the oldest countries in the world with a recorded history of about 3,500 years. Just think for a moment. The Turks settled down as Seljuk Turks in Turkey in 1017, and we have a history of 3,500 years. The ancient heritage of Armenia is reflected in the Hebrew Old Testament, which records that Noah's Ark rested on Mount Ararat, which is the principal national symbol of Armenia. Each time I go to Yerevan, to Armenia, sometimes I spend an hour just watching Mount Ararat and visualizing Noah's Ark. Several important dates and events in the years following Jesus Christ's earthly ministry shaped the destiny and the identity of the Armenian people. In 43 AD, in fact, 43 AD, this is really a very important date, Jesus' apostle Thaddeus came to Armenia. Jesus' disciples Thaddeus and Bartholomew were the first illuminators of Armenians' faith in Christ. The Armenian monastery of St. Thaddeus was built in his memory. It dates back to the 7th century AD, and in fact, it is a UNESCO World Heritage site, and it is, in fact, one of the most important sites. And I came very close to it, but I couldn't go to the other side of the border. And it's a place to visit and to see, and then you will realize the importance of the history and the role they played in our history. In 301 AD, Armenians converted to Christianity and made it their state religion. Armenia, in fact, is the first nation to have taken this step. And as I go further and share a couple of other dates with you, like 405 AD, Saint Mesrop Mashtots accomplished a mission given to him by Armenian leaders. He created an Armenian alphabet so that our nation would have a common language of worship and culture. The first book they translated was the Bible. And the highly accurate translation is known to this day as the Queen translation. It was so accurate. He was an amazing linguist. In 451 AD, Armenians fought against the Persian Empire because the Persian king wanted to convert them to a different religion. Armenians were terribly outnumbered and they lost the battle, but our people continued to resist for the next 38 years until the Persians finally gave up and signed a treaty giving Armenians religious and political rights. In fact, all our history is filled with different eras and with different fights that we have gone through. In 1071 AD, Seljuk Turks fighting the Byzantine Empire won a historic victory at Manzigert. The Turks, they know this date so well. Manzigert in Asia Minor, part of the Armenian homeland. The battle is celebrated by Turks to this day and is an element of their dangerous pan-tyrannic ideology. It was mentioned by Erdogan recently in an ominous speech, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago. In 1399, the Ottoman Empire imposed its rule over Armenia while extending in every direction. It eventually reached past Jerusalem to Egypt and got as far north as Vienna in 1683. The Ottoman Empire oppressed its Armenian population, making them second-class citizens who would not bear arms, could not ride horses, could not ring their church bells, and had to pay higher taxes. Beginning in the 18th century, Armenians were subjected to persecution and massacres. I do have German archives written by German missionaries. They were eyewitnesses of different massacres in different parts of Armenia. And it's like mind-boggling to see how they describe the disaster and the massacre occurring in different parts of Cilicia. after a series of massacres in villages across eastern Turkey in the year 1870s, Armenians appealed for safety and security to the powers of Europe, England and Russia. We are doing the same today. And we want the whole world to see what we're going through. In fact, we had several meetings today regarding this important issue. In 1878, one of the representatives of Armenia, in fact, the Catholicos himself, attended the Congress of Berlin. The representative came back disappointed and bitter. And this wonderful person was Hrimian Hayrik, the Catholicos of all Armenians who did that trip. And then as soon as he got out, he said, "Where are the iron sherep in Armenian?" In English, ladle? I think so. Soon after this, seeing the Armenians with no strong protector, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, also called the Red Sultan, started a series of massacres that claimed the lives of 300,000 Armenians. In fact, this is what I meant when I said I have German archives written by German missionaries who were eyewitnesses of these thousands of people who have been massacred, and hundreds of thousands of children and young people among them. And very interesting that at the beginning of the 20th century, Armenians still lived throughout their homeland, which extends from Asia Minor and into the Armenian highland where Artsakh is today. In fact, in the year 1000, Artsakh was a kingdom, and Artsakh existed 189 BC. And when Azerbaijanis claim it's our land, it's our piece of land. In fact, Azerbaijan is just 100 years old, and we owe to Stalin, who gave them the authority to overpower over Artsakh. In 1909, Abdul Hamid was ousted by the Young Turks, who advertised fraternity, equality, and liberty for all citizens of the Ottoman Empire under the leadership of, in fact, tyrant, three of them, three pashas who committed the Armenian genocide in 1915. And again, I am going back to the German archives, and I am quoting a couple of phrases expressed by Dr. Nazem, who was a member of these Young Turks and serving Anwar Pasha, who was the Minister of War, who said, "I repeat," he said, Dr. Nazem, during an, let's say, underground meeting, "We must not leave one single Armenian in Turkey. We must kill the Armenian name." And their plan was to recast Asia Minor as a homeland for the Turks, make it ethnically and culturally homogeneous, and create a nationalized culture. And the slogan was Turkey for the Turks. Although Armenians and other ethnic groups had lived in Asia Minor for more than 1,000 years before the Turks had arrived. They officially began implementing their plan on April 24, 1915, which is why we commemorate this date. From 1915 to 1923, and you can read about the details of the massacres in the German archives, more than 1.5 million Armenians were killed because of the Armenian genocide. Today, we Armenians are spread all around the world, in fact, in 120 countries.
Wow.
And our voice is being heard so loud all over, and we will, in fact, shout louder for justice and liberty for Artsakh, for Karabakh, for Armenia.
Thank you so much, DJAMBAZIAN. Thank you very much for that very informative historical background. That was very helpful to hear all the different years and the dates as to how the transition of history occurred. Thank you for that. Without further delay, I will move to Professor Sam EKIZIAN. Professor EKIZIAN, the mic's yours.
Thank you, Suzy. And thank you to the university for allowing us to have this panel discussion. I'll get right into it. The modern nation of Armenia is a tiny fraction of the size of the lands historically inhabited by Armenians, many of whom lived for millennia in what is now Eastern Turkey. After the genocide carried out against them by the Ottoman Empire in 1915, hundreds of thousands of surviving refugees, as mentioned by Father JAMBAZIAN, were scattered around the world. Around 1 million live in California, another 1 million in Russia, and thousands more in various continents throughout the world. This diaspora is estimated to comprise about 8 million people, almost 3 times the number living in Armenia itself. Most diaspora Armenians rightfully perceive their place outside of historic Armenia to be the direct result of forced displacement during the genocide. This perception leads to a heightened awareness of threats against them. So when we see these attacks, such as the present ones on Armenians from Azerbaijan and Turkey, we see the representatives of the same ideology of pan-Turkism mentioned by Father JAMBAZIAN, that is the aspiration for cultural and political unification of all Turkic peoples, which ultimately led to the first modern genocide. Unfortunately, Turkey's imperialist ambitions have not faded, as evidenced by their interventions, including in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and now in Artsakh. As noted, Armenia and Artsakh are now once again the victims of unprovoked attacks by Azerbaijan, with the direct encouragement and support of Turkey. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, president of Turkey, has vowed that Turkey will stand by Azerbaijan, and he has backed up this pledge by supplying weapons, military personnel, and even Syrian jihadists to wage war. Erdogan has also stated, most chillingly, and I quote, "We will continue to fulfill the mission of our grandfathers, that our grandfathers carried out for centuries in the Caucasus." The Armenian diaspora is a residue of this mission, and the precarious limb on which Artsakh hangs is a reminder that that mission continues to be carried out today as the world turns a blind eye. The only reprieve is an independent Artsakh recognized by the powers that be. This is not a matter of political or economic sense, but instead a matter of survival. Turkey's rhetoric and its troublesome parallels to that of the Ottoman Empire at the time of the Armenian genocide have significant resonance in the Armenian community. For Armenians, this is an existential threat. It's about a right to exist and a fear that the genocide that began 105 years ago will continue while the world turns its back to the bloodshed. This leads me to the psyche of the Armenians and what led to this dialogue. What prompted this university's activism and ultimately the organization of this panel? As President Brown relayed, it all started with an email from a deeply concerned young Armenian law student asking, and perhaps even pleading, for light to be shined on the existential plight of her people. This act, which leads to the discussion, was spurred by the student's Armenian identity, an identity that has been shaped by transgenerational trauma. This identity defines the community's reactions to this most recent threat. Trauma passed down through the generations has molded the collective consciousness of Armenians, both in Armenia and the diaspora. This trauma is further enhanced not only by denial of the genocide by its perpetrators, but Turkey's and now Azerbaijan's institutionalized hatred of Armenia and Armenians. This identity defined by this transgenerational trauma is presently being revived by military conflicts with those in essence responsible for the genocide. And it is through this lens that the recent attacks on Artsakh and Armenia are viewed by Armenians, resulting in a collective existential anxiety. This manifests itself in the angst of that young law student and the angst of the Armenian community at large. However, it is also this identity that mobilizes the community in these difficult times. The Armenian community has in fact mobilized. This is key to the future of Armenia and Artsakh. Even more important, however, is the response of the international community. On our own, Armenians cannot match the financial, military, and manpower advantages of Azerbaijan, particularly when it is being actively supported by Turkey. The question then becomes, on what basis can we seek international assistance? The argument for this international intervention does not rely solely on a humanitarian perspective, but also a legal one. This legal basis relates to Artsakh's right to self-determination, independence, and perhaps even reunification with Armenia. Typically, discussions of this legal right are founded on two central and competing principles of international law: the right of a people to self-determination as contrasted with territorial integrity of nations. These two principles are in direct conflict when it comes to Artsakh, but additional factors more clearly establish that Artsakh's right to self-determination is sacrosanct and should be internationally recognized. This is based on four key factors. First is the historical habitation of Artsakh by a clear and distinct Armenian majority. Second is the fact that the only reason that Artsakh finds itself within Azerbaijan is the arbitrary shifting of a border by Stalin in 1921, a mere 70 years prior to the beginning of Artsakh's battle for self-determination. A third basis is the pogroms or attacks targeting Artsakh's Armenian population beginning in 1988 by Azeri forces, compelling these Armenians to defend themselves and their land. Finally, and very importantly, is Artsakh's use of Soviet-era legal mechanisms available at that time to declare its independence. For 3 decades now, the international press has covered the situation in Artsakh as a territorial conflict. But the reality of this territorial issue is that it has been inhabited by Armenians for thousands of years. Additionally, territorial integrity claims cannot be based on Joseph Stalin's misguided decision to annex Artsakh to the Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan. It is also important to note that even after this annexation, Artsakh remained an independent, autonomous region. Aside from the historical presence of Armenians and Stalin's shifting of the border, there are 2 additional factors legitimizing Artsakh's invocation of independence. The first centers on the ethnic tensions and subsequent pogroms against the Armenian population of the region, in essence, forcing the movement for self-determination. And next, the Soviet-era constitutional mechanisms used that ultimately led to Artsakh's declaration of independence. When ethnic tensions were rising between the Armenian and Azerbaijani population in Artsakh in 1987, it led the people of Artsakh to hold a referendum in support of transferring autonomous region of Artsakh from Soviet Azerbaijan to Soviet Armenia. The referendum was overwhelmingly approved. This was followed by a parliamentary vote and subsequent notification to the Supreme Councils of the Soviet Azerbaijan and Soviet Armenia that Artsakh wanted to transfer its territory from Soviet Azerbaijan to Soviet Armenia. Even though it did not have the legal right to do so, the Azerbaijani Supreme Council denied the almost unanimous wishes of the people of Artsakh. Ultimately, the Parliament of Artsakh announced its unilateral secession from Soviet Azerbaijan and announced its independence as a region within the USSR. Following this announcement in late 1988, Azerbaijanis mounted violent attacks targeting Armenian citizens living in the region, further escalating the need for an independent Artsakh. In September of '91, Artsakh, having seceded from Soviet Azerbaijan, now declared itself to be an independent republic within the Soviet Union. Following this, Artsakh held a second referendum and overwhelmingly voted for secession from Soviet Union. The USSR ultimately collapsed, and all former Soviet republics, one by one, started to invoke the same right to secession invoked by Artsakh and declared themselves independent. Importantly, Artsakh declared independence from the Soviet Union, not from the Republic of Azerbaijan, which was not even in existence at the time of Artsakh's declaration of independence. In so doing, once again, Artsakh invoked the very same constitutional rights as Azerbaijan and other Soviet satellite states when they later also declared independence from the Soviet Union. These Soviet-era constitutional rights not only related to Soviet republics, but specifically allowed autonomous regions to declare independence. Therefore, Artsakh properly exercised its rights under then existing Soviet law to declare its sovereignty. These constitutional actions towards independence were sanctioned by then existing law and cannot simplistically be countermanded by Azeri arguments based on territorial integrity. The four distinct grounds discussed fully support Artsakh's self-determination and necessarily mean that Artsakh has a legal right to independence and that this independence can and should be recognized by the international community. This is the only path to peace in the region. Today, strewn throughout Artsakh's ancient terrain lie the debris left by Azeri troops, Syrian mercenaries, Israeli drones, Turkish special forces, and Russian and American missiles, all escalating into an ever more grim regional war. Casual observers with tangential interests will continue to weigh in on basic discussions of self-determination versus territorial integrity. Analysts will debate the geopolitical and human rights implications of the use of Syrian mercenaries, jihadists, as well as cluster bombs. All of this will continue to happen in the coming days and weeks as the battle continues to rage with little consideration of the human cost. This is why the Armenian diaspora has risen up. This is why a UWLA student wrote an impassioned email to her law school. And this is why Artsakh's independence is so critical. Over these past few weeks, as fighting has intensified, Armenians from Los Angeles, Moscow, Paris, and elsewhere in the diaspora have taken to the streets to remind the world of their history and why it must not be repeated. The international community has to make it clear to Turkey and Azerbaijan that they will not stand by and watch ethnic cleansing take place. Once again, this will not be based solely on a humanitarian perspective, but also one founded on Artsakh's legitimate and legal right to self-determination and independence.
Thank you for that, Professor EKIZIAN. I would like to thank you for, instilling that. You made a quote as to, the fear that the genocide will continue to occur. And I believe if the diaspora doesn't give the attention that it's necessary, it can occur. So thank you for that. Without further delay, Father VAZKEN, MOVSEIAN, we are ready to hear you.
Thank you, Professor. And I too want to thank the university for this opportunity. I'd like to talk today a little bit about the idea of genocide, because I think when we discuss a war, obviously from what you heard from the previous two speakers and anyone who's following the news, it becomes obvious that this is not just a border skirmish. When you've got the Azerbaijan army, you've got the Turkish army, you've got mercenaries coming in and backed by weapons from Israel, and this small little group of Armenians trying to hold it off. This is not about just getting that border or the land of Artsakh. There is a bigger story here, and as the previous speakers alluded to it, the pan-Turkism, about doing away with Armenia, finishing off what they started in 1915. And I want to talk about genocide, because I think when we use that word, it flows off of our lips too easily. And we have to understand that genocide is not war. It differs from war tremendously. Genocide, and I think the easiest way to understand it is to think about Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler did nothing that was illegal in Germany. It was legal to kill the Jews. And in fact, if you didn't kill them, that was illegal. And that's what it was in Armenia. I have a quote here from Talat Pasha, who in 1915 ordered the execution. He said, it has been communicated to you that we have decided that all Armenians living in Turkey shall be exterminated. Now listen to this. It says, those who oppose this order can no longer function as part of the government. So in other words, a genocide is not about it's legal to kill somebody. It's also illegal not to kill that person. You don't have a right inside that government. You can't function. The government is ordering the execution of people. And this is very dangerous. The danger is when we start comparing it with war. And I want to share with you a couple things, because I had a chance to go to Rwanda back in 2006 with a group of educators from USC. And what you're seeing on the screen is a group that I call my Ladies of Testimony. We got into Rwanda, and for me, it wasn't a journey. I had grown up with stories of the genocide that my grandparents had told me, my parents had told me. And I thought to myself, what would it be like to be in Armenia post-genocide? And I said, let me go to Rwanda 10 years after their genocide. It would be comparable to being in Armenia 1925. And I want to share with you this particular story that goes along with this picture. I had been there for about 5 or 6 days, and we noticed that there wasn't anybody who had gray hair in the town. And that kind of made sense. During a genocide, everybody is killed. The only ones who are left are the young kids. So 10 years later, I'm meeting genocide survivors who are just infants, children, maybe teenagers. And it was very strange because I had not seen anybody with gray hair for 5 days until we got to this camp. This was a camp for widows and orphans. And we had somebody who was taking us to the camps. His name was John from Solace Ministries. And he got up and he spoke to the women and introduced us, the educators, myself. And he turned to them and he said, how many of you are widows here? And you see them all raising their hand. That's not what that's not what they're answering. It was the next question that bothered me. I tremble every time I think about it, and I hope it makes you reflect on what genocide is about. The question that they're answering is the next question, which he said, how many of you have HIV/AIDS? And this is when they raised their hands. In other words, they were allowed to live, and this is the mind of the perpetrator. They were allowed to live so that they would infect the rest of the population. In other words, these were the time bombs. After they committed genocide, they could now leave anybody that was left there. These time bombs were there, these people infected with HIV/AIDS. The second picture that I have was in a church that was filled with 5,000 people. And in that church, the perpetrators burned it down. We had gotten there 10 years later, and somebody had painstakingly taken these skulls that were left. The church was just in shambles. There was bones all over, but somebody had tried to catalog these skulls. And I want you to look at the skull at the bottom. that's cracked. And I always refer to that because the way he described it, he said this person was macheted. And all of a sudden you realize that the word machete is now a verb. It's being used as a verb. It's an action, the blunt machete. And so you see the cruel, why we call genocide inhumane, and as if war can be humane, but genocide is upping the notch. It's what we've talked about here in this country, systemic racism. This is systemic racism on steroids, where you not only hate the people, but you want to destroy the people. But this is what I want you to, before we leave this, this frame, take a look at the bottom frame. There's some tiny, tiny little skulls. And I asked John, I said, what are these? Are they partial skulls? He said, no, these are baby skulls. And I just, for a few moments, you can't talk when you're in this situation. And I said, who would kill babies? He says, it's very easy. Babies grow up to be older adults. So why not kill them before they get to be adults? And this haunted me just 2 days ago when the Azeris hit the maternity hospital in Artsakh. Think about it. I want you to think about, it's the same story. This is genocide. It's about killing off not only the troops that are in front of you, but the gene pool, genocide, killing it off and getting rid of all the Armenians. So you have Turkey from Black Sea to Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. The only people that are in there is this small enclave of Armenian Christians that are messing up the problem there. So I want you to be aware of what genocide is, and we can take this picture off. I know it's it's gruesome, and I thank you for indulging me on that one. But I want to share with you some final comments. Now, if we understand what genocide is, and you look across the spectrum at the different genocide, I felt very fortunate to have been in Rwanda at the time that I was, because in a sense, I had one foot in the first genocide of the 20th century, Armenia, and I had another foot in the last genocide of the 20th century. And in between, you see all the genocides from the Holocaust, Ethiopia, to Bosnia, and you put them up and you say that, you know, as a human species, why are we at this point where this is how we are solving our conflicts? And then you come to Darfur. Darfur was something that I personally got involved in. It made us start with the In His Shoes mission. Actually, it was born from a bunch of young Armenians who said, we've got to do something for Darfur. And we actually went out there with a group that consisted of people like George Clooney and Don Cheadle. And we solicited signatures here in the state of California. We got enough to get then Governor Schwarzenegger to divest from the Sudan to the tune of $7 billion. And this was a big achievement, especially we felt as Armenians. Can you imagine if somebody had taken away the money and the weapons from the Turks? This is all you need to do, take away the money. And so I'm really, really excited when I see the protest movements, when I see these movements, when we're out there and we're boycotting these things. But here's what I want to leave you with. All of these things that we do, you've got to think about critical mass. I know we are all pumped up right now. We want to do our best, but what is that critical mass? Do you know that in 2003, between 3 months that there was protests against the Iraqi war, there were 36 million people that went to the streets protesting the war in Iraq. We went ahead and we had the war in Iraq anyway. Just a few weeks ago, we saw 150,000 Armenians going out in the street, peacefully demonstrating against the attacks by the Azeris. That same night, the Lakers won. And guess what? We were all pushed off the news, and the Lakers, who had won, their fans looted the place. I mean, I guess they didn't get it that they won, you know. I guess you would do that if you lost. But
Right. And what's interesting is that I kind of wanted to add on to what you were saying. You know, sometimes again, media's media, but sometimes the coverage that, you know, other things in the world get, you know, as an Armenian living in the United States, sometimes I say, I wish we can get more coverage, but, you know, it is what it is. But to see and hear your experience, Father MOVSEIAN, from Rwanda, just, I got goosebumps all over my body, and seeing those images just totally were very unsettling. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for bringing your personal experience. Without further delay, I know Karnik's live in Chicago, so before his Friday night is over, let's hear from Karnik.
Thank you, Professor MARJANIAN. I do appreciate the invitation, and I'd like to thank President Brown as well for the amazing work that goes into putting presentations like this on. And I've seen some of the other ones from the university and the law school as well. I have to say, though, I am very blessed and thankful for being on this panel in particular. I see a lot of the names and individuals who have really touched my life and my family's life in a lot of different ways. Most of them don't even know me, but I know that through their outreaches, I have read their writings, I have seen their social media posts, I have seen their work and studied their work. So I just want to say thank you. It really is an honor to be on the panel with you. You know, as you saw from the initial image that was put on the screen for this panel, you know, the war began in September 27th, but I want to talk to you about something else. I want to talk to you about what I was doing on September 26th. And the reason is that, you know, here we are, is a law school environment, and I could see the number, this solid number of students that are here listening to us. And I just wanted to paint this image. You know, it was a Sunday morning. It was a Saturday morning, Friday, I can't even remember what day it was, but it was morning, and it was about 10 a.m. And it's when I usually do my course. I teach at Artsakh State University, and I teach a course in international law and in Armenian. And I was teaching, you know, that course at 10 o'clock in the morning to a group of about 20 students via Zoom, as we always do. And oddly enough, you know, our coursework for that day was on war crimes. It was on the big three, I like to call them: war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And I'm not going to go into the details, because I think Father MOVSEIAN and other speakers did a wonderful job on really kind of digging into what genocide is. But I want to speak about one thing in particular, and that is the idea of intent. Those of you who are in law school know that every single crime has an actus reus and it has a mens rea. And that mens rea is what really, really separates what's happening right now on the ground. These 20 students, the next day, I was on Messenger with them and on their Facebook pages, trying to see and make sure that they're okay. And the reason I was doing that was not just because of the shelling, but it was about the story that preceded what happened on September 27th. And I want to take you back, I don't even have to go so far back as the genocide in 1915. We can go all the way to April 2016, when Azerbaijan had attacked Armenia in the 4-day war, and the rhetoric that came out of Baku at the time. It was about something called Armenophobia. We don't like to talk about it. We don't really understand what it is. But it is the equivalent, one could say, of what anti-Semitism is, that preceded what happened to the Jews at the Holocaust. And Armenophobia was rampant in 2016, to the point of, if you were to read the statements coming out of Baku and the parliament in Azerbaijan, it would shock you. The idea of talking about Armenians as pigs, talking about people that are left over from the sword, and just the sheer amount of hatred that went into preparing a population for what it is that we're seeing today. And what we're seeing today, I would go so far as to say, is not the prelude for genocide, because a genocide doesn't matter how many people are killed. It's not about a certain number that you got to reach to make it a genocide. It's about what they're thinking while they're doing it. And what we've seen in terms of the sheer amount of technology driven by that intent is equivalent to genocide. Sure, we have war crimes, we have the treatment, we have beheadings of soldiers, we've got other types of atrocities, we've got skinning of human beings, we have untold, disgusting acts being committed while we're on this call, committed by Azerbaijanis, not only against citizens, against civilians, but also against combatants who are captured. And there's an interesting thing there in terms of war crimes. The minute a combatant, even though he's bearing arms, is captured, he ceases to become a combatant and he's a civilian. This is what separates civilization from barbarity, right? And this is where we are right now, is that division is completely blurred to the point that Azerbaijan has taken us really to the depths of depravity, using technology which was not even imagined in any of the previous genocides that we have seen, even in the 90s, even in Darfur. There are drones today taking pictures of other drones, and there are military strategists in Israel and Azerbaijan and Turkey studying the sheer movement and flows of the drones as if it's some sort of video game. And those drones are using technology, some of it manufactured here in the United States, some of it in Canada, a lot of it in Israel, are essentially hunting human beings. I mean, this is what is really kind of shocking. And I need to say it like that because, you know, sometimes we get caught up in the philosophical language and we don't realize that, like, you know, in my particular instance, you know, I've got, you know, 22, 23-year-old law students that I'm calling and messaging on a daily basis for the last 33 days, making sure that they're not one of the hunted that have been targeted and killed. And this is a real kind of reality on the ground. We can talk about all the aspects of humanitarian law, but the real core of the idea is that human beings are human beings, which is why I'm really happy that our fathers from the church are here too, because humanitarian law, and this war in particular, has really showed us the confluence of moral obligation and legal authority, which takes us to the actual acts on the ground. We see things that are abhorrent. We see drones. We see mercenaries that are killing in the style, and the evidence is there on the ground, in the way that ISIS mercenaries have killed in Syria. There are parallels being drawn by UN organizations and ombudsmen that are really drawing these similarities out. And it's a rather unappetizing art, but it is an art that needs to be studied because people need to understand exactly what's happening. Coupled with the concept of Armenophobia, you see that what is happening is not just killing. We're not talking just about killing. Yes, that's painful. Killing is horrible. But we are killing with a particular intent to destroy the Armenians of Artsakh from the land of Artsakh and destroy that civilization. And we see that even when they're not victorious on the battlefield. This is what's really interesting to me, because of the last two very interesting events that have taken place that I find particularly telling. When Azerbaijan has failed to remove societies from the ground in various cities that they have been attacking, they have been burning those cities so to make them uninhabitable. I mean, imagine the idea that if we don't succeed in hunting by the drones or using Turkish military officers and mountain specialists to hunt down Armenians, what we're going to do is destroy the home so they can't come back. And there you have, again, the value of the intent, the mens rea that really underpins the movement. What is actually happening on the ground, why it's happening. And even today, as we started getting on this call, those of you who may be following events on the ground, you know, there was a real kind of interesting nighttime sky in Artsakh today. Overnight, and people were like, you know, what is that? What's going on? You know, it looks like, you know, kind of the residue from a July 4th celebration, where you have like streaks and streaks of really bright colored fire falling from the sky. And it took a couple hours for people to figure out that the Azerbaijanis using technology that had been used by the Ukrainians and also perfected by the Turks were dropping white phosphorus onto the forests. Now, why? Okay, sure, that sounds like an ecological disaster, but let's not forget what caused it in the beginning. They were bombing cities to make them uninhabitable. Human beings were running into forests to protect themselves. And now they had said, okay, let's turn it up yet another notch, where we are now going to burn the forests and thus burn the human beings. And so this doesn't make sense until and unless you understand the logic behind it. And that's where the I guess the disgusting side of genocide really comes out, because it's the mental state that is corrupted. It's the thinking that is corrupted. And that doesn't happen overnight. That happens, and history will show, as it has, and it's you know, yes, it's completely true that this is something that is, you know, that is a philosophy, an approach towards the Armenian people that was, you know, that saw at its height, perhaps, or at least at its initial height, what we saw in the genocide of 1915, but it is carried through to various programs within the cultural destruction acts within Turkey. We see it within the language and the rhetoric coming out of Ankara and coming out of Azerbaijan, and even in school books. I mean, this is really interesting in terms of you know, we're at an academic institution. Armenians are portrayed in Azerbaijani books as the evil people, the bad people, to fifth graders, to second graders, to kindergartners. You don't get that type of hatred overnight. You get that hatred when it is taught, and when the negotiators speak of preparing populations for peace. You see just how far that gap has been created within Azerbaijani society. What's really interesting is that how this plays in with the concept of recognition, which previous speakers had discussed with respect to Artsakh. Yes, it's a hashtag. I have it on my Facebook page too. It's something that I've studied, I've thought about significantly. But what is it about recognition in this particular instance that makes a difference?
And I think, I think you made a really good point there, Connie, with regards to that social media campaign. And I feel like it's really making the change that's necessary. And I thank you for all of your contributions. And I love seeing the perspective from a professor's point of view. So without further delay, I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Giragos to speak to our audience. Mark, it's all you. Mark, we can't hear you. The little microphone. There you go.
I said, thank you, Susie, and I was going to give you a shout out because that was a very good segue, how you went from social media to introducing me, because I was going to say, in watching this illustrious group, and when I say illustrious, I mean it. I've always been a fan of Sam and Reverend JAMBAZIAN. I go back to before I was my adolescence, and Father VAZKEN, I knew him before he was a VAZKEN. So from Armenian Summer Camp, and Carnegie, I've followed your work, and I'm a huge fan. Let me tell you what the difference is, and there are times I think every Armenian has recognized this. I was talking with Congressman Schiff last week or the week before, and I was telling Adam that I've known him since Adam was a young prosecutor, and I said, this is the first time that I've ever seen the community ever believe in their hearts and in their minds that this is an existential threat. This is all of the talk about the genocide and the denial of the genocide and the recognition of the genocide, which we could spend a lot of time on. All of that is almost theory. This is practice. What we are witnessing, what we all have, and some of us feel impotent about because we're sitting in America living a very nice life as this tiny gutsy little nation of ours that has been elaborated on here, been in existence for almost 2 millennia, is facing an existential threat. And it is a clash. It's a clash that is one for the ages. And the reason it's one for the ages is because we've got in Erdogan a homicidal, genocidal madman who recognizes now that this is his method or his way, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the election in the US, whether it's the ability because of the oil crisis in Russia. He recognizes that right now he's going to use Azerbaijan as a proxy, and he's going to fight this war, and he's going to try to wipe out Armenia and Armenians. And we've seen it, and it's infected Europe. We've seen, you can go onto YouTube, you can watch the news, you can see the roving band of marauders going through France looking for Armenians, talking about raping women. You know, basically, they want to finish the job, and they've said it. You can watch their speeches. They've said, and as Carnegie has said just now, they teach this. They inculcate it. And what has happened here is they are now trying to finish the job. They are trying to finish it both from an ideological standpoint in terms of eliminating Armenians, the same way as you mentioned that Hitler did it with the Jews. And the irony of Israel supplying the drones is not lost on any of us. But they're also doing it from a political standpoint, that they know that this allows Turkey to take over and reestablish kind of a new Ottoman Empire. What we have that they have not reckoned with, and what gives me solace, I sit here in downtown LA, right around the corner. I'm at the corner of Wilshire and Figueroa. You know, SUZY, I applaud you for what you're doing. I applaud, I said at the beginning of this, I applaud all of the 20-somethings and 30-something Armenians who I remember as a kid growing up, my grandmother telling me the stories and worrying. My grandmother, who escaped from a Turkish orphanage after her whole family was wiped out, and somehow at age 6 or age 8, she didn't even know how old she was, somehow made it to Ellis Island, somehow was pregnant with my dad, either at 12, 14, who knows. Her biggest worry when I was growing up is that Armenians would forget their heritage. They would forget the Armenian. And I can't tell you, right behind this building is the headquarters for Mercury Public Affairs. For those of you who don't know, Mercury Public Affairs has been on the payroll for the Azerbaijanis and the Turks on various things. And there was a crowd of youth out there protesting, to the point when I went out, we actually were able to shut down Wilshire Boulevard in the middle of the day. And LAPD was helping by moving the patrol cars on either side of the street. The very next day, and it was thousands of young Armenians and Armenian sympathizers understanding that they were going to do something. And they did it. The very next day, the Mercury resigned the contract. They threw it away. BGR, Public Affairs. They've been doing kind of this cashing the blood money checks. You know, for all the people in the Armenian community who have been hating on Kim Kardashian for so long, remember, Kim was the one who, with a little help from Eric Israelian, went out there and used her social media platform. Within days, we got articles in the New York Times. Within days, we got Washington Post. For whatever you say, stop hating, start loving, because united, we can turn this around and have so far. The social media power, the power of social media is unlike anything that you can imagine. What the Armenian youth have done and are continuing to do is unbelievable. We have Serge Tankian, we've got the music, we've got Kimmy K, we've got people on the ground there, whether it's Lada, who's all over there, or others reporting. Call out the Azerbaijani, what I call the proxy fools who are cashing the checks. There was an article by some woman whose name I won't even repeat, who wrote an article in the New York Times, and it was so one-sided, and it was just within the last 36 hours. All you had to do was a Google search, then you found out very quickly this woman was stationed in Istanbul and has been basically intimidated by the Turkish government. She knows she doesn't want to end up like Hrant Dink later on. So she knows what side the bread is buttered on, and that's how the reporting is done. Call them to task. Do not for a second think that there's nothing you can do. I mean, I have felt, as I think everybody on this panel and everybody watching and everybody in the diaspora has felt, is there's got to be more that we can do. What more can we do? We give money, but that doesn't, what does money do for us? I mean, you know, we give humanitarian aid. What good does that do as, you know, they're dropping all kinds of cluster bombs illegally in violation of the Geneva Convention, in violation of every international criminal code? what you can do is you can support, you can write, you can be on social media, you can protest, you can get out there, you can give money. But most of all, you cannot be silent, you cannot be quiet. This is ultimately, at the end of the day, an existential threat. I don't know how much more to say, but I never thought we would reach the point where now we would be arguing in infuriating fashion. The clash, every time I see clash, I want to go crazy. They're committing war crimes. This isn't a clash. Can you imagine if you said Auschwitz was a clash between insurgent Jews and the Nazi Germany? I mean, it would be outrageous. They would never get there. Call people out on it. Do not let them do it. Understand that you've got power. We may be 96 hours away from an election, but guess what? We are right now, the Armenians can tip this election, whichever way we want to go. We have Armenian communities in what are called the so-called battleground states. There's a reason that both Trump and Biden in the last 48 hours have made statements. They know the Armenian community is important. And the reason we're important is not only do we have the resources, we have the voice, and we got to give that voice. And we cannot be, we can try all the traditional ways, but we need to band together in a way, put aside whatever kind of differences we have, and be ecumenical in the true sense of the word, and use every conceivable weapon, because this is it. This is do or die. We're 105 years removed from the master plan, and they're executing it 2 generations later.
Thank you so much, Mark. And when you said the Armenian people have a voice, and I kind of want to add on that we have you, and I know that you have made every effort through the Armenia Fund, through every organization, through spreading all your voice throughout the Armenian community to get your voice heard as one of our very prominent and influential speakers. And
one of the things that I've said this for years, and this right now is the perfect time to do it. I've said for years, one of the most potent weapons we have is we need to stop just, if you're Armenian, preaching to the choir is not going to get us anywhere. Talking amongst ourselves is not going to get anywhere. If you know somebody in the Odar community, if you know somebody that has you've got to get them. You've got to pull them, pull them by the ears, the old Armenian expression goes, and cut their ears, I think is the literal translation, and get them to speak. And get them to talk about this and get them to understand. I will tell you that I have been warmed, it warms my heart by the Greek community. The Greek community has come through like gangbusters, but we need more. We need more people to understand this is not just an existential war for the Armenian people. It is a fight of civilizations right there. We're at the crossroads of a fight for civilization and for truly one of the few times that you can say good versus evil.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I just want to say a quote to add on, and I will turn it over to President Brown. If you wish to see the future of a nation, look at its youth. And one of those youth members was the reason where this all started at UWLA. So thank you for that. And to close, I'd like to turn this over to President Robert Brown and to give his closing remarks and to end this wonderful panel chat.
Wow. This was amazing. Congratulations. Congratulations to all of you. This panel presentation accomplished, I believe, everything we wanted to do. We wanted Mark, just so you know, to get this out to our network so that everyone possible could be informed, because you're right. I mean, those inside the Armenian community know this issue very well, but it's for all of us getting it outside to wake people up, to shake them, to let them know that anywhere that inhumanity is occurring, it's an issue for all of us, especially for us as lawyers. We have to wake up. And so I want to thank each and every one of the panelists. the University of West Los Angeles is going to provide a scholarship to a student in Artsakh to attend our school free of tuition, either our law school program or our business school program. We will provide one scholarship to a student, and SUZY and Sam and whoever else you want to be a part of the selection panel. We will delegate that to you, but the university is going to make that commitment.
Is that this is, as they would say if we were on CNN, that's breaking news.
Well, again, as you know, obviously, I'm a member of a class that has been traditionally enslaved and oppressed and subject to domination and subjugation. And in the present political climate, we also feel like we are being exterminated.
Hey, President Brown, one little anecdote. When my mother grew up in Fresno, and she used to tell me a story that when you looked at, when her parents were there looking for houses to rent, both of her parents were escaped the genocide, that there were signs on the front lawn, no blacks, no dogs, no Armenians. And I always got offended that the dogs got higher billing than the Armenians, but there's something to be said there. If people understand that what is happening here can happen anywhere, and it just is pointed at us right now, but we have to stop it because it can be pointed at you, it can be pointed at anybody, which is why we have to kind of proselytize to outside of just the Armenian community. And thank you.
And that's also the reason why we have to band together. We have to come together. Inhumanity anywhere, it's not an issue of right or wrong. It's an issue that we cannot tolerate it. We cannot tolerate hate anymore. We cannot tolerate injustice. We cannot tolerate violence anymore, no matter where it occurs. And I was so moved by Professor Kirkonian's comments about the actus reus and the mens reus, which I barely remember from 42 years ago when I was in law school. But nonetheless, I wanted to pose real briefly. I know we've got to go, but this is so critical. Just indulge me for a second. Where does this deep and abiding hate and intolerance come from in terms of our humanity? It is inconceivable to me as humans that we could harbor such inhumanity, such bigotry, and such intolerance. I'm reading a book right now that I would commend to all of you. It's called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, and it really contrasts the racial injustice in the United States with the anti-Semitism in Germany, along with the caste system in India. And all of them have this common thread of hatred and inhumanity. And if I could just ask real quickly, just one minute, if each of you could just, where, because I want all the people who are listening to this program, I would just like them to hear, because whenever we experience or witness these types of violent injustices, you've got to recognize that it's not about the political dynamics of the situation. It's about humanness and inhumanity and hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. And those should not be countenanced in our humanist communities. Sam, 30 seconds, okay? Susie's gonna kill me for hijacking her program. But 1 minute, where does this hatred and intolerance come from? You're on mute, Sam. Sam, you're on mute. Sam?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's institutionalized. This is something that is literally, young Turks and young Azeris are growing up being socialized specifically to hate Armenians. Certainly, there are religious distinctions between the two, but I think that's the critical thing. They are being indoctrinated in this manner, and they grow up believing that dogma.
Father, how about you?
Tim, I think two things. One of them, Professor Kirkonian hit on it. This is what they've been taught. I think we are a product of our environment and what we've been taught. If at age 2 you're taught that the Armenians are under the dogs in the category, that's what you're going to grow up believing. And on top of it, I think this religious, this fanatic religious, and I'm across all religions, fanaticism, fundamentalism has no more place in this world, but too many people are being fortified by that to do this evil that we're seeing in the world. So it's a combination of the two, these stories that come to us from these religious myths, so to speak, of how we are better than everybody else, and therefore I have the right to kill you. And these stories are outdated, they're finished, but unfortunately, they're part of the scenario. But it goes back to education.
Professor Kirkonian, I'm sorry. Thank you, Father.
Yeah, I think, I'd like to maybe unpack the taught aspect of it, because I 100% agree. It is taught. Humans are not like this in their natural state. This has to be taught and indoctrinated. And that breaks down into 3 subcategories. One are the oral stories, which Father VAZKEN just mentioned. There are oral stories that reinforce what they're taught. Clearly, there's the educational system which imposes that on these young children at an early age. And then what we see really shockingly, and I have to say, as an Armenian American, I am proud of what I'm seeing in terms of leadership, which is the 3rd component, where you have those of you who want to look at the Rami Safarov case, you can look about a beheading of an Armenian soldier by an Azeri, and to see how the government of Azerbaijan treats that versus how the president of the Republic of Artsakh goes and cares for POWs that have been captured and are being treated at Armenian hospitals, the same Armenian hospitals that the Azeris turned around and bombed a couple of days ago. So I do believe that even in extreme hatred, you can teach the good. Good can be taught. It will take time, but good can be taught as well.
Thank you. Reverend DJAMBAZIAN? You have to unmute, sir. You have to unmute.
Okay, so hatred, in fact, starts in your thoughts. Any action is the product of your thoughts. Our attorney Karnik talked about it just a while ago, and I think the darkened thought leads to darkened actions. And what we are experiencing at this moment, it's above human thinking, because their darkness is so deep and they have been indoctrinated, and their thoughts are focused on the darkness of mind, which in fact any action that comes from that mind is destructive. And this darkness of thought also kills the conscience, your conscience. That means you have a dead conscience. You kill, you abuse, and you don't feel anything because it comes from the darkness of your mind. So what I see, in fact, happening nowadays, and today there was another very horrible description. I had goosebumps. I couldn't even listen to that person. I said, stop, enough of that. In fact, it comes all from the darkness. And the Turkish mind has gotten darker, unfortunately. I have a lot of friends in Turkey. In fact, one of the closest friend, opera singer, is a Turk who was a closest friend of my son, who's also an opera singer. But he was talking about their government and about the darkness of their government, which in fact comes from the thinking into indoctrination. When you indoctrinate the kids, then they grow up, and you cannot talk about Armenians in Azerbaijan. They are considered as the sons of evil, and that's how the actions indicate that deep hatred. And then very interesting, there is a saying which says destruction goes before hatred. That means when you hate, all you do is destructive acts, nothing that can build up, but it destroys everything. And what
Thank you, Reverend.
what we're experiencing today is total destruction.
Right.
Thank you. Mark, last but not least.
Look, you know, I have famously said I wanted to be a priest, and the Archbishop talked me out of it and talked me into being a lawyer. My belief is that humanity has the dual urges. You have dual urges. All of us are sinners. All of us have the dual urge to do good and to do bad and to transgress. What has happened here and what happens, I say it all the time, if I defend somebody who is, you know, vilified, I often say I've represented some of the most hated people in the world, but there's very few people that are pure evil. One of the people that is pure evil is Erdogan. I mean, this is somebody who is as close to a genocidal madman since Hitler, maybe worse than Hitler in a lot of ways. And he has used his brute political power to basically subjugate the Turkish people. Mind you, when you talk about that, remember, this was a fact that was stunning to me. It was told to me years ago, Hilda told me, one of the ANC people in Paris when we were there, there's close to 2 million Armenians kind of living in Turkey as kind of stealth Armenians. Turkey took our women during the genocide and converted them. I mean, it's one of the reasons that their population is better looking now than they used to be, because they took our Armenian women and raped them and did whatever. But I mean, it was an ugly, ugly people. But the problem is here, you've got a genocidal madman who sees an opening and he's going for that opening. And unfortunately, and one of the reasons that he's had to go get mercenaries and disaffected kind of ISIS types is because the Azerbaijani people are not bad. You see the people when they get interviewed, they don't want any part of this war. This is something that's been foisted upon them. And every time the Azerbaijani thief, who is their president, calls or tries to bomb a hospital or do anything else through this act of hate as this proxy for this genocidal madman, the people aren't behind him. He has to outsource it to get mercenaries in there to do his dirty work, because nobody wants this. They want war, we want peace. I mean, that's all you have to say. We are part of the better angels. We are trying to channel love. They are channeling hate. It's the oldest story in the world. It's why there is religion. It's why there is the constant try to understand the meaning of life. And every once in a while, you get pure evil. Erdogan is pure evil. The Azerbaijani head there is pure evil. All you have to do is take a look at the way they kind of rape and pillage the economy there. Same thing with the Turkish lira. There's a reason the Turkish lira has collapsed and will collapse. And I have great confidence, Love is going to triumph. We are going to win this battle. I've said it again. I'm not exaggerating. This is a battle for civilization.
Right.
Thanks, Mark. Suzy, I'll turn it back over to you. I'm sorry to hijack the program as usual. I said I wasn't going to do that, but I unfortunately, but you know, this is such a critical issue. You know, I really wanted to go through the exercise. You know, all of us here, most of us are older, so we've been through these types of things. We've seen the civil rights movements come and go, but it's for the young people, it's for the people who are viewing this, that hopefully we can raise their consciousness and their awareness so that they can act whenever they see injustice and inhumanity occurring, to preempt it. You know, we've had to fight this war. You know, we've fought this battle, most of us, for a number of different generations now. but hopefully the young people, you see the consciousness of them both marching in the streets, and it's all ethnicities, it's all quote unquote races, it's all genders, it's all sexual orientations now that are coming together, banding together, like Mark said, for love, for a love of humanity, for a love of our oneness as a people. That is what really that exercise is all about, so that the young people hearing this won't allow society to slip back into its evil ways again, and will, more importantly, take forceful action to be a preemptive in the future. So I apologize, Susie. I'll give the program back to you, but I'm very passionate about this issue. I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you for being a part of the UWLA family. You will always be a part of the UWLA family. And however we can help facilitate getting this message out and supporting your cause, please let us know how to do so.
Thank you so much, President Brown. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, if you guys all look at the chat box, you will see, please email your interest in applying yourself or recommending someone for the UWLA's 100% tuition Crisis in Armenia Scholarship to any UWLA program, whether it's the School of Law or the School of Business. And imagine one of the very prominent panel members that are sitting in front of you on the screen today are going to pick that. So whether it's Professor EKIZIAN, Reverend JAMBAZIAN, Father MOVSEIAN, Professor Kirkonian, and Mr. Mark Giragos, someone is going to pick that one lucky member to attend the university and travel here all the way from Armenia. So I thank the university for offering that to someone in the greater community. Spread the word, spread that exciting news and get that word out. I'd like to thank each one of our panel members for giving us your time on a Friday evening. And some of you on the screen might see a flag, and I wasn't going to go into naming everyone individually, and I have someone on my ear, and that's Dean Frickberg. And I wanted to say another reason why we have a university where the dean of the law school is facilitating and help facilitate the program and not assigning it to someone else. Dean Frickberg, I know you're right across the hall and I see you hiding on the screen, but I know I said I wasn't going to thank everyone individually, but thank you so much. And last but not least, I'd want to encourage, continue donating, donate to the Armenia Fund. The link has just been uploaded once again in the chat. Let's get those donations in. I know that they say, I heard many people say, I've already donated, But let me tell you one thing, that's like the soldier on the front line turning to you and saying, I already fought for you. And I'm sure no one would like to hear that. So just as we don't want a soldier to turn around and say, I already fought for you, let's keep those donations going. The link is live in the chat box. Let's keep this going. Let's save our people. Let's save Artsakh. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you. Thank you to each one of our panel members. Thank you, President Brown. Thank you, Dean Frickberg. Thank you to everyone on the UWLA committee who helped us bring the organization together. All those tireless meetings we had came to life. So I thank each and every one of you. You each know who you are. Thank you and happy Friday.
Thank you.
Shanora Galam.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you. God bless.
Dr. Brown.
God bless.
Good to see everybody.